My name is Margaret Chen, and at 72 years old, never imagined I'd be signing over the deed to my 4-bedroom colonial house to my next-door neighbor instead of my only son. Standing in that lawyer's office, watching my son David's face drain of color as he realized what I'd done should have felt like revenge. But after being called a burden and watching my value reduced to property assessments, it felt like freedom. Before I tell you how a simple Tuesday dinner turned into the moment that changed 3 families forever, let me ask, have you ever been taken for granted by someone you'd give your life for? Because what happened next proved that, sometimes, the best family isn't blood at all. The house in question wasn't just any property. It was the home my late husband Richard and I had built with our own hands in 1978. Nestled in the quiet suburbs of Cedar Falls, Minnesota, every brick, every carefully chosen tile, every lovingly planted rosebush in the garden held memories of our 43 years together. This was where we'd raised David, where I'd taught piano lessons for 30 years, where Richard had spent his final days looking out at the bird feeders he'd installed just to make me smile. The market value had climbed to $450,000. But its true worth couldn't be measured in dollars. David lived 40 minutes away in a gleaming modern townhouse with his wife Patricia and their 2 teenagers. Their visits had dwindled from weekly Sunday dinners to obligatory holiday appearances, and even those felt more like business transactions than family gatherings. "Mom, we need to talk about your finances," had replaced "How are you feeling?" The house I'd maintained as a warm sanctuary for family had become, in their eyes, nothing more than future inheritance. The catalyst for everything came during what I'd hoped would be a pleasant Tuesday dinner. I'd spent the entire day preparing David's childhood favorites: pot roast with baby potatoes, green beans, almondine, and a lemon meringue pie made from scratch. The dining room was set with the good china, fresh flowers from my garden adorning the table. I'd even put on the pearl earrings Richard had given me for our last anniversary, wanting to feel presentable for my son's rare visit. But David arrived late, phone pressed to his ear, barely pausing his business call to peck my cheek. Patricia followed, her lips pursed as she surveyed my antique furniture with the same expression she might reserve for items at a garage sale. The teenagers, Maya and Josh, remained in the car, apparently too busy with their devices to come inside and greet their grandmother. "Mom, this is getting ridiculous," David said, not even waiting for us to start eating. "This house is way too big for you. You're becoming a burden trying to maintain it. We've found several nice assisted living facilities. That would be perfect. It's time to be practical." The word burden hit me like a physical blow. I'd maintained this house impeccably. My health was excellent, my mind sharp. But in that moment, I realized my son saw me not as his mother who'd sacrificed everything for his success, but as an inconvenient obstacle to his inheritance. Cedar Falls had been our paradise when Richard and I first arrived in 1975. Back then, it was a small town where neighbors knew each other's names and looked out for one another. We'd chosen the plot on Maple Street because of the massive oak tree that would shade our future children's playtime. Richard worked as a mechanical engineer at the local plant while I gave piano lessons from our living room. Those early years were lean but filled with dreams and determination. Building the house took 3 years of weekends and evenings. Richard insisted on doing much of the work himself, teaching me to lay tile and sandwood. "This isn't just a house, Maggie," he'd say, his hands covered in sawdust. "It's our legacy." Every room was designed with family in mind. The large kitchen for holiday gatherings. The basement perfect for children's sleepovers. It's a sunroom where I could teach piano while watching kids play in the yard. David arrived in 1982, after 5 years of trying and 2 heartbreaking miscarriages. He was our miracle baby, and perhaps that's where our troubles began. We showered him with love, maybe too much. Richard worked overtime to afford David's private school tuition. I gave up my modest performance career to be room mother, soccer team mom, debate club coordinator, whatever David needed. We convinced ourselves that our sacrifices were investments in his future. The neighborhood evolved around us over the decades. The new gens moved in next door in 1995, a young couple with twin daughters. Anna Nugent and I bonded over garden fences and shared recipes. When Richard was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2015, the Nugents were there every day. Anna brought soup. Her husband Tom mowed our lawn without being asked, and their daughters, now grown with children of their own, sat with Richard so I could shower or grab groceries. David's visits during Richard's illness were sporadic and brief. He'd arrive in his Mercedes, check his watch constantly, and leave Patricia in the car because hospitals make her uncomfortable. After Richard passed, David's first concern was the house. "You should sell while the market's hot, Mom. That's what Dad would want, for you to be practical." But Richard's last words to me had been, "Keep our home, Maggie. It's full of love." The first 2 years of widowhood were the hardest. I'd catch myself setting 2 coffee cups in the morning or cooking too much food out of habit. But slowly, I built a new routine. Piano students returned young families who'd heard about my teaching from others. I joined the community garden club, volunteered at the library's literacy program, and started a weekly coffee group for neighborhood widows. The house that David saw as too large was actually full of life and purpose. Anna Nguyen became my closest confidant. We'd share tea in my sunroom while her grandchildren played piano badly but enthusiastically. "You're like the grandmother I wish my children had nearby," she once told me. Her own parents lived in Vietnam, unable to travel due to health issues. I taught her daughters family recipes, attended their children's school plays, and became the elder they turned to for advice. Without realizing it, I gained a second family while my biological one drifted away. The signs of David's growing disregard accumulated gradually after Richard's death. Started small, forgotten birthdays, explained away by busy schedules, canceled lunch dates justified by important meetings. "You understand, don't you, Mom?" became his standard refrain, and I always did understand. Even when understanding felt like swallowing glass, phone calls dwindled from daily check-ins to weekly obligations, then to monthly inconveniences. When David did call, conversations revolved around practical matters. "Have you paid the property taxes? Did you get the roof inspection? You really should hire someone for the yard work. Kay, never. How are you coping?" Or, "I miss Dad too." I became a series of tasks to manage rather than a mother to cherish. Holidays transformed from joyful gatherings into stilted performances. Patricia would arrive bearing generic gift baskets, the kind corporations send to clients, while eyeing my china cabinet like an appraiser. "These antiques must be worth something," she'd murmur to David, not quite quietly enough. Maya and Josh, my only grandchildren, knew more about their phones than their grandmother. When I tried showing them Richard's workshop or my piano, they'd fidget and ask for the Wi-Fi password. The contrast with the Nguyen family grew starker each year. Anna's daughters, Lisa and Jennifer, visited their parents every weekend, despite busy careers. Their children called me Grandma Maggie and fought over who got to help me in the garden. When I baked cookies, they'd appear at my door within minutes, drawn by the smell and the promise of stories about the old days. Their genuine affection highlighted the hollow courtesy of my own family's interactions. Financial patterns emerged. That troubled me deeply. David developed a habit of mentioning his temporary cash flow issues during visits, always followed by how much the house maintenance must cost me. The hints weren't subtle. When I'd offer to help what mother wouldn't, he'd accept with practiced reluctance. "Just a loan, Mom. I'll pay you back when this deal closes." The deals never seemed to close, and the loans were never mentioned again. Yet when I genuinely needed help, David was perpetually unavailable. The winter I slipped on ice and bruised my ribs. Anna drove me to the hospital while David was tied up in meetings when the basement flooded during a spring storm. Tom Nguyen spent his Saturday helping me salvage boxes of memories while David texted that he'd try to stop by next week. Next week never came, but Patricia called to ensure I had flood insurance. The neighborhood noticed before I admitted it to myself. Your son's very successful, neighbors would say carefully. The unspoken question hanging in the air. So why isn't he here more? I became an expert at excuses, crafting elaborate reasons for David's absence. Business trips, important projects, teenage children with busy schedules. I had a rotating roster of explanations that fooled no one, least of all myself. Still, I clung to hope. I filled photo albums with pictures of David's childhood, as if evidence of past love could resurrect present affection. I kept his room exactly as he'd left it for college, a shrine to the boy who'd once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. On his birthday, I still made his favorite chocolate cake, even though he hadn't been home for his birthday in 5 years. That Tuesday evening in October started with such hope. David had actually called the week before to schedule dinner, not just agreed to it when I suggested it. We need to have a family discussion, he'd said, and my foolish heart had soared. Perhaps he was finally ready to reconnect, to bring the grandchildren around more often. I'd even imagined holiday plans, maybe reinstating our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. I spent days preparing, not just the meal, but the entire house. Every surface gleamed, fresh flowers adorned each room, and the air smelled of lemon polish and brewing pot roast. I'd even had my hair done at the salon, wanting to look my best, to show David that 72 didn't mean declining. The dining room table was set with wedding china and crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandelier Richard had installed for our 20th anniversary. When David's Mercedes pulled into the driveway at 6:47:17, minutes late, my hands trembled with anticipation. But watching through the window, I saw him sit in the car for a full 5 minutes, his phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly. Patricia remained in the passenger seat, reapplying lipstick in the mirror. Neither of my grandchildren had come. Traffic was horrible, David announced without apology, striding in while still looking at his phone. Patricia followed, her heels clicking disapprovingly on my hardwood floors. She surveyed the formal table setting with barely concealed disdain. Oh, Margaret, you didn't need to go to all this trouble. We can't stay long. Throughout dinner, David's phone buzzed incessantly. He'd glance at it between bites, occasionally, typing responses while I tried to maintain conversation. Patricia pushed food around her plate, mentioning her new diet that apparently excluded everything I'd prepared. When I asked about Maya and Josh, David waved dismissively. Teenage stuff. You know how it is? I didn't know, because they never visited. Finally, over the lemon meringue pie that Patricia declined and David barely touched, he set down his phone with purpose. Mom, we need to be realistic about your situation. Oh, you're 72, living alone in a 4-bedroom house. It's becoming a burden on you. And frankly, on us. We worry constantly. The word burden hung in the air like a noxious cloud. I set down my fork carefully, my grandmother's training in maintaining composure during difficult moments serving me well. I wasn't aware I'd become a burden, David. I maintain the house myself, pay all my bills, drive myself everywhere. Patricia interjected, her voice dripping with false concern. You shouldn't have to do all that at your age. There are wonderful facilities where everything's taken care of. Meals, cleaning, medical staff on site. David pulled out his tablet, swiping to a presentation he'd clearly prepared. I've researched several options. Golden Years Community has an opening, and if we move quickly on selling the house, you'd have plenty for a nice apartment there, plus significant savings. Selling the house? My voice sounded strange, distant. Mom, be practical. This place is worth nearly $500,000. That money could ensure you're comfortable and cared for, instead of struggling to maintain an old house. You're being selfish, hanging on to it when it could provide for your future. The silence after David's pronouncement stretched endlessly. I stared at the lemon meringue pie, remembering teaching 6-year-old David to separate eggs for this very recipe. His chubby fingers had crushed 12 eggs before managing one clean. Separation, but his joy at that success had made the mess worthwhile. When had that eager child become this calculating stranger? I need time to think, I managed, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. David's sigh spoke volumes. Mom, the market won't wait. Golden Years has a waiting list. We need to act within the month, or I said I need time to think. The firmness in my voice surprised us both after they left, David pecking my cheek perfunctorily. Patricia already halfway to the car. I stood in my kitchen surveying the barely touched dinner. The waste of food seemed symbolic of larger wastes, wasted love, wasted years believing that sacrifice would be reciprocated. Wasted hope that blood meant unbreakable bonds. I found myself in Richard's workshop, untouched since his death, except for my weekly dusting. His tools hung precisely where he'd left them, each one a memory. The workbench bore scars from projects completed together. The birdhouse David had abandoned after losing interest, the jewelry box Richard made for my 60th birthday. The cradle crafted with such hope that never held another baby. What would you do, Richard? I whispered to the empty room. Richard had been a man of action, not words. When faced with disrespect, he'd simply withdrawn his energy and invested it where it was valued. Don't water dead plants. Maggie, he'd said once about a toxic friendship I'd been maintaining. Save your nurturing for things that can still grow. That night, sleep eluded me. I walked through each room of my house, not seeing the burden David described, but the life it contained. The kitchen where I'd taught dozens of neighbor children to bake. The living room that had hosted countless piano recitals. It's the garden that fed not just my family, but anyone in need. It wasn't just property. It was a living testament to lives. While Dash lived at 3 a.m., I made tea and sat in the sunroom watching the Nguyen house. A soft light glowed in their kitchen. Anna often battled insomnia too. On impulse, I texted her, tea and insomnia party. Within minutes, she appeared at my back door in her robe, carrying homemade B&H cookies. I heard David's car earlier, she said gently, settling into her usual chair. Bad visit. The story poured out David's demands, Patricia's calculations, the repeated use of burden. Anna listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling our cups. When I finished, she sat quietly before speaking. In Vietnam, we have a saying, the house chooses its family. Sometimes the family that loves a home isn't the one that inherits it, but the one that inherits its spirit. David sees dollar signs, not memories, I said. Then perhaps David shouldn't inherit it, Anna replied simply. The audacity of the thought stole my breath. Not leave the house to my only child. It went against everything I'd been taught about family obligations. But as I looked at Anna, who'd held my hand through Richard's death, whose children called me grandmother, a radical idea began forming. The decision made, I faced the reality of execution. Minnesota law, I discovered, placed few restrictions on property transfer between living persons. But the emotional and practical hurdles loomed like mountains. Every morning I woke with doubt gnawing at my resolve. Was I being spiteful? Irrational? The word burden would echo in my mind, strengthening my determination. My first stop was Anthony Castellano, the estate attorney who'd handled Richard's affairs. Office, with its leather-bound books and mahogany furniture, had intimidated me during our first meeting years ago. Now, I sat across from him with steel in my spine. You want to deed your house to your neighbors? Anthony's eyebrows climbed toward his silver hairline. While you're still living? With a life estate for myself, I clarified. I continue living there until my death, maintaining and paying taxes as I do now. But ownership transfers immediately to the Nguyen family. And your son will inherit everything else, savings, investments, personal property, just not the house. Anthony leaned back, studying me over his glasses. Margaret, I've seen family disputes that would curl your hair. This decision will likely cause a permanent rift. Are you certain? My son called me a burden, I said simply. He sees my home as his future bank account. not as the repository of family love it was meant to be. The new gens have shown more family devotion in 20 years than David has in the last 10. We'll need to ensure this is ironclad, Anthony mused, already shifting into lawyer mode. Documentation of your mental competency, clear reasoning for the transfer, witnesses beyond reproach. David will likely challenge this. The legal machinery ground slowly. Papers were drafted, revised, notarized. I underwent a cognitive evaluation to prevent future challenges to my mental state. The psychologist, a kind woman named Dr. Foster, spent 3 hours testing my memory, reasoning, and decision-making capacity. "Mrs. Chen," she said afterward, "you're sharper than most people half your age. Whatever you're planning, no one can claim diminished capacity. The hardest part was approaching the new gens. How do you offer someone your most precious possession without making it seem like charity or manipulation?" I invited Anna and Tom for Sunday dinner, serving Vietnamese dishes I'd learned from Anna over the years. After dinner, in the same dining room where David had labeled me a burden, I presented my proposal. Tom's teacup rattled against its saucer. Anna's hand flew to her mouth. "Margaret, we couldn't possibly let me explain," I interrupted gently. I told them about David's plans, my feelings of abandonment, my wish for the house to shelter a family who understood its true value. This isn't charity. It's ensuring my home continues its purpose, nurturing family love. Your family has shown me more care than my blood relations. Let me make that bond legal. "But David," Tom began. "David sees property, not home. He'd sell to developers who'd tear it down for condos. Could you stand seeing that happen?" The new gens exchanged glances, conducting the wordless communication of a long-married couple. Finally, Anna spoke. "We need time to discuss this. And we insist on a formal appraisal and payment." "No payment," I said firmly. "It's a life estate. Means I continue living here, maintaining everything as always. You gain nothing immediate except the knowledge that the house will pass to people who'll cherish it." 3 weeks into the legal process, crisis struck. David arrived unannounced on a Thursday morning, finding me in the garden with Anna's grandchildren. They were helping me plant bulbs for spring, mostly making mud pies, while I told them stories about the flowers that would bloom. David's expression as he surveyed the scene could have curdled milk. "Mom, we need to talk alone." His tone made the children scatter to Anna's yard like startled birds. In the kitchen, David slapped a folder onto my counter. "Golden years. Put down a deposit to hold a unit. The moving company is scheduled for next month. I've arranged estate sale evaluators for the furniture. It's all handled." "You did what?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Someone had to take charge. You're clearly not thinking rationally, playing in mud with the neighbor's kids like you're their grandmother. It's embarrassing, Mom. What would Dad think?" That invocation of Richard broke something inside me. Your father would think I'm honoring everything he built this house for: family, love, community. Not the kind measured in blood, but in presence. Don't be dramatic. I'm trying to help you. No, David, you're trying to help yourself to a quick inheritance. His face flushed. That's unfair and untrue. Do you know what I deal with? It's private school tuition, mortgage payments, keeping up with Patricia's family. And you're sitting on a gold mine, playing grandmother to strangers while your real grandchildren, my real grandchildren, don't know my middle name, interrupted. They've never asked to see your father's workshop or learn my mother's recipes. Maya and Josh are strangers by your choice, not mine. We're busy. Life is complicated now. Not like your generation where women just stayed home and sacrificed everything for ungrateful children. The words hung between us like a blade. David stood abruptly. I'm calling Dr. Patterson. Clearly, you need evaluation. This hostility, this irrational attachment to strangers, refusing to see reason, it's dementia. It has to be. After he stormed out, I sank into Richard's chair, shaking. The threat was clear. Comply or be declared incompetent. But David had underestimated me. I had Dr. Foster's evaluation, Anthony's documentation, and something more, determination forged from righteous anger. I called Anthony immediately. We need to accelerate everything. That evening, Anna appeared with soup and solidarity. David looked angry. Are you okay? I told her about the confrontation, the deposit at Golden Years, the threat of incompetency proceedings. Anna's usually gentle face hardened. He would steal your home and call it help. He believes he's right. That's the worst part. In his mind, I'm a stubborn old woman refusing to accept reality. Then we accept your offer, Anna said firmly. Tom agrees. Our daughters are flying in next week. They want to meet with you to make sure this is truly what you want. But Margaret, we can't stand by and watch him bulldoze your life. The pivot point had arrived. Once the papers were signed, there would be no reconciliation with David. But as I looked around my kitchen, where Anna's soup simmered on the stove, where her grandchildren's drawings decorated my refrigerator, where real family gathered, not from obligation, but from love, I knew the choice was already made. With the new gen's acceptance, everything accelerated. Anthony worked with remarkable efficiency, preparing documents that would make the transfer ironclad. The life estate provision meant I retained all rights of ownership during my lifetime. I could live there, make changes, even rent rooms if I chose. Only upon my death would full ownership transfer to the new gens. It was, Anthony assured me, completely legal and nearly impossible to challenge if properly executed. Lisa and Jennifer Nguyen flew in from Seattle and Chicago respectively, taking time off from their careers to understand what I was offering. We sat in my living room, the same room where their mother and I had shared countless cups of tea, and I watched these accomplished women struggle with emotion. Auntie Margaret, Lisa said, using the title from their childhood, you taught me to play piano in this room. You attended every recital, every graduation. You were there when Mom couldn't be because of work. But this, it's too much. It's not enough, I countered. Do you know what your family has given me? It's purpose after. Widowhood, love when my own son offers only obligation. Your children call me grandma and mean it. How do you put a price on that? Jennifer, ever practical like her father, raised concerns. What about David? We don't want to cause family problems. I laughed, surprising us all. David has already caused the family problems. He wants to warehouse me and liquidate my assets. You want to preserve what this home represents. The choice is simple. We spend days working through details. Okay. The new gens insisted on establishing a maintenance fund, contributing monthly to ensure I never worried about repairs or taxes. They wanted everything documented, not from distrust, but to prevent any appearance of exploitation. Their integrity made David's avarice even starker by comparison. Meanwhile, my daily life bloomed in unexpected ways. Freed from the weight of trying to earn David's approval, I threw myself into activities that brought joy. My piano students increased as word spread that Grandma Maggie was accepting new pupils. I started a cooking class for young mothers in the neighborhood, teaching the comfort foods that seemed to be disappearing from modern tables. The Nguyen grandchildren became daily fixtures. 8-year-old Lily practiced piano while her brother, Marcus, 6, painted at Richard's old easel-eyed setup in the sunroom. Their afternoon presence filled the house with the laughter it had missed for so long. When David called to check on Golden Years arrangements, children's voices often echoed in the background. What's all that noise? He demanded one evening. Life. I replied simply, the sound of life in this house. Mom, you're not running some kind of daycare, are you? The liability alone, I'm being a grandmother. David, perhaps if you brought Maya and Josh around, you'd recognize the sound. His silence spoke volumes before he pivoted back to logistics. The estate sale company needs access next week. Cancel. Them, I'm not moving. Mom, be reasonable. The deposit is your problem. I never asked you to put down a deposit. I never agreed to move. Your assumption is not my obligation. The shift in power dynamics was intoxicating. For years, I'd accommodated, apologized, accepted less than bare minimum from David, while grateful for scraps of attention. Now, with legal documents ensuring my home's future and a chosen family surrounding me with genuine care, I felt no need to placate him. The transformation in my relationship with the new gens transcended legal documents. Where once we'd been friendly neighbors, we now navigated the delicate transition to chosen family. Tom, initially uncomfortable with the arrangement, began stopping by for coffee before work, seeking my advice about his approaching retirement. "I've worked since I was 15, he confided one morning. "The idea of not working terrifies me more than death." Richard felt the same, I told him. But retirement isn't about not working. It's about choosing your work. Richard's happiest years were building toys for grandchildren who never played with them. David's kids? Tom asked gently. "They preferred electronics," I said without bitterness. "But perhaps your grandchildren would appreciate handmade toys." Tom's eyes lit up. Within weeks, Richard's workshop hummed with activity again as Tom learned to use tools my husband had cherished. The symmetry wasn't lost on me, the workshop waiting decades for someone who'd appreciate its purpose. Lisa and Jennifer adjusted their visit schedules, ensuring someone checked on me weekly without making it feel like monitoring. They brought their children for longer stays, knowing they were investing in their future home's memories. Jennifer's daughter Sophie, a serious 10-year-old, discovered my attic full of photo albums and spent hours asking about every picture. "Who's this?" she'd ask, pointing at young Richard in his army uniform. "That's Mr. Richard when he was just 18, about to ship out to Korea. Were you scared he wouldn't come back? We weren't married yet. But yes, I was terrified of losing him before we'd even begun." Sophie studied the photo intently. "But he did come back. And you got your whole life together. It's 43 wonderful years," I confirmed. "That's why the house matters," Sophie said, with startling insight. "It's not just walls, it's all the years inside them." This child understood what my own son couldn't see. The legal transfer was scheduled for the week before Thanksgiving. Anthony had crafted documents that were bulletproof. The deed transfer, life estate provisions, cognitive evaluations, and supporting affidavits from neighbors attesting to my mental clarity and the new gens. Years of support. 3 days before signing, David made his final attempt. He arrived with Patricia and, surprisingly, Maya and Josh. The teenagers looked uncomfortable, clearly conscripted for emotional manipulation. "Mom," David began, his tone artificially warm, "we've brought the kids to help you start packing." "Want to help their grandma transition to her new home?" Maya, now 16, rolled her eyes. "Dad, we literally just met Grandma at Easter 2 years ago." "Maya," Patricia hissed. "What? It's true. We don't know her. You said we were coming to help move furniture for money." Josh, 14, stared at his phone. "Can we get this done?" "I have practice at 4. The truth, laid bare by teenage indifference, hung in the air. David's face cycled through emotions: embarrassment, anger, desperation. "Mom, please, don't punish me for being busy. We can start fresh. The kids can visit you at Golden Years. It has a game room and stop." I held up my hand. "Maya, Josh, would you like some cookies?" "Fresh baked this morning." They exchanged glances. "Are they gluten-free?" Maya asked. "They're full of gluten, sugar, and love," I replied. "Also chocolate chips." Both teenagers gravitated toward the kitchen, abandoning their parents' agenda for cookies. The day before the signing, the neighborhood buzzed with anticipation. Word had somehow spread, perhaps through the beauty shop or the postal carrier who noticed official-looking envelopes. My phone rang constantly with neighbors offering support, sharing their own stories of family disappointments, or simply expressing admiration for what they called my brave choice. Anna and I spent the morning baking for the signing day celebration. Her daughters had insisted on marking the occasion properly, transforming a legal transaction into a family moment. As we rolled dough for a B&H bow, Anna shared her deeper feelings. When we first came to America, we had nothing. Tom's English was broken. Mine was worse. The children cried for home every night. You were the first person to treat us as neighbors, not strangers. You taught me English at this very table, remember? I remembered patient afternoons sounding out words. Anna's determination to master her new language, matching my own need for purpose after David left for college. This house gave us roots, Anna continued. Now you're giving us permanence. How do we ever repay that? By filling it with the same love Richard and I tried to create. That's all I've ever wanted for this home to nurture families. That afternoon, Anthony called with a warning. Con Margaret, David's been to see me. Case threatening to contest the transfer, claiming undue influence. He's also hired a private investigator to look into the new gen's finances, searching for evidence of exploitation. Let him investigate, I said calmly. He'll find a family who paid full price for their home, maintained it beautifully, and never asked me for a penny. Meanwhile, his own loan history might prove interesting if examined. You kept records. Every check, every excuse, every broken promise to repay. Not from spite, but from habit. Richard taught me good documentation. Anthony chuckled. Remind me never to underestimate grandmothers. We're ready for whatever David brings. That evening, I hosted what I privately thought of as my independence party. The Nguyen family, several neighbors, my piano students, and their parents. The living room overflowed with people who'd become my chosen community. We shared food, stories, and music. Little Marcus played Twinkle Twinkle, Little Star with intense concentration, while Sophie accompanied on her violin. Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down pulled me aside. Margaret, I've watched this unfold with awe. My daughter keeps pressuring me about assisted living too. You've shown me I have options. We always have options, I assured her. Sometimes we just need courage to see them. As the party wound down, Tom raised a glass of his homemade plum wine to Margaret Chen, who taught us that family is defined by presence, not DNA, and to Richard, whose spirit lives in these walls and will be honored by all who dwell here. The toast brought tears, but they were cleansing, not sad. Tomorrow would bring legal finality to an emotional truth years in the making. I slept peacefully that night. Richard's presence seeming especially close. Did I do right? I whispered to his pillow, still on his side of the bed. The answer came as morning light through the window he'd installed to catch the sunrise warm. It's clear and absolutely certain. The signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the title company's office downtown. The morning of November 20th dawned crisp and bright. I dressed carefully in my navy suit, the one I'd worn to David's college graduation, when hope for our relationship still bloomed. The irony wasn't lost on me. Anna arrived early with coffee and Vietnamese pastries, her presence steadying. My nerves, ready? She asked. For years I've been ready, I replied. The title company occupied a modern building downtown, its conference room bright with morning light. The new gens were already there, Tom in his best suit, Lisa and Jennifer, having flown in again to witness this moment. Anthony had arranged everything perfectly. Documents spread across the polished table, a notary standing by. We were reviewing final paperwork when commotion erupted in the lobby. David burst through the door, breathless, his face flushed with exertion and rage. Patricia followed, clutching her designer purse like a shield. Stop this immediately, David shouted. I've filed for an emergency competency hearing. This transfer is elderly abuse. Anthony stood calmly. Mr. Chen, you're interrupting a legal proceeding. Please lower your voice or I'll have security escort you out. My mother is being manipulated. David's voice cracked with desperation. These people have poisoned her against her own family. David, I said quietly, standing to face my son. "The only poison in our relationship came from your own disregard. You're not well, Mom. You need help." Giving away our family home to strangers, our family home. I laughed, surprising everyone, including myself. When was the last time you treated it as a family home? When did Maya or Josh last play in the yard where you learned to ride a bike? When did you last sit at the dinner table without checking your phone? That's not the new gens aren't strangers, I continued, my voice gaining strength. And I held my hand when your father died while you attended by conference call. Tom fixed my roof during the storm when you were too busy to return my calls. Their grandchildren know every story about this house while yours can't remember which room was your nursery. Patricia stepped forward. The financial implications are none of your concern, Anthony interjected smoothly. Mrs. Chen's cognitive evaluation shows superior mental function. Her finances are properly structured. The only thing changing today is the deed to one property, transferred with full understanding and zero coercion. I'll contest this, David threatened. Every court in the state will see a son who called his mother a burden, I finished, who tried to force her into assisted living to liquidate her assets, who took loans totaling $60,000 he never repaid while begrudging every moment spent in her presence. The room fell silent. David's face had gone pale, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling before witnesses. Furthermore, Anthony added, producing a folder, we have documentation of Mr. David Chen's financial interest in this property, predating any concern for his mother's welfare, including emails to realtors about upcoming availability and estimates of sale proceeds. Lisa Nguyen spoke for the first time. Mr. Chen, your mother gave my children the grandmother they couldn't have across the ocean. She taught them piano, helped with homework, celebrated their achievements. That's what family does. She's not your family. David's last protest came out as a whine. No, I agreed. I'm the family they chose. And they're the family that chose me back. 6 months after the signing. My life had evolved into something I couldn't have imagined during those dark days of David's burden pronouncement. The house thrived under our joint care. The new gens insisted on sharing every maintenance task, turning chores into family activities. Tom had transformed Richard's workshop into a wonderland of handmade toys, while Anna and I expanded the garden to supply our neighborhood food pantry. The community response had been overwhelming. My story spread through senior centers and community gatherings, inspiring others to reconsider their options. I received letters from elderly parents finding courage to resist pressure, from neighbors creating chosen family bonds, from adult children reconsidering their own behavior toward aging parents. Without intending to, I'd become a symbol of senior empowerment. David's threats of legal action had evaporated when Anthony sent him a detailed accounting of his unpaid loans. The total, nearly $60,000, effectively silenced his claims of tease, exploitation. We hadn't heard from him since, though Maya had begun sending occasional texts. Dad's still mad, she wrote, but I remember those cookies. And what you said about persisting. The Nguyen grandchildren had claimed the rooms, David, and Patricia had mentally redecorated for profit. Sophie turned my craft room into her study space, surrounding herself with my mother's quilts while doing homework. Marcus practiced piano daily, his improving skills filling the house with the music it had missed. Their presence erased years of emptiness on a warm May evening. We held a celebration in the backyard, partly for Marcus's first piano recital, partly for Tom's retirement, but mostly for family. The yard overflowed with neighbors, Anna's extended family, my piano students, and what I'd come to think of as my chosen family network. As I sat on the porch Richard had built, watching children chase fireflies across the lawn he'd seeded, Anna joined me with tea. Any regrets? She asked gently. I considered the question. Regret for David's choices, certainly. Sadness for the relationship we might have had. But regret for my decision? None, I said firmly. This house is more alive than it's been in 20 years. Tom's parents want to come from Vietnam for an extended visit, Anna said carefully. Maybe permanently. They're getting frail and we want them close. But our house is too small and this house has 4 bedrooms, I finished, smiling. Only one occupied by a stubborn old woman who'd welcome the company. Anna's eyes filled. You'd share your home with my parents. I'm sharing it with family, I corrected. That includes whoever you love. Later that evening, I found myself at Richard's grave with flowers from our garden. The house is full of children again, I told him. Different children than we imagined, but loved just as much. The walls echo with Vietnamese lullabies and piano scales and homework arguments and all the sounds of family. The next morning brought a letter from the Cedar Falls Community Foundation honoring me at their annual gala for innovative approaches to aging and community building. But I set it aside. Marcus was waiting for his piano lesson. Sophie needed help with her history project. And Anna's parents were arriving next week. My calendar, once empty, now overflowed with purpose. In the mirror, I saw a woman standing straighter than she had in years, wearing her age as accomplishment rather than burden. The house hummed with approval, ready for another generation of memories.